Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining our webinar with CRES Forum and ACC on our recent polling of millennial voters on clean energy. I'm going to pass this over to Conor Maguire from WPA Intelligence. If you have questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to chat them to the panelists and organizers, and we'll address questions at the end. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. This is Conor Maguire from WPA Intelligence. We put together this poll with CRES Forum and American Conservation Coalition. One thing I'd like to first off is introduce the team that we have on the line. We have Charles Hernick from CRES. Charles?
Hey, thanks, Conor. It's a pleasure to be here on the webcast with you all today. And really, for me, a meaningful point. Citizens for Responsible Energy Solutions is a relatively young organization, and I've been on board since day one in 2017. And we've really come a long way in terms of being able to understand where conservatives, where Republican voters are in the clean energy space. And I think that what's particularly impressive about this polling is the specificity that gives us for where individuals want to see their elected officials head when it comes to clean energy. I think that when I started, and even over the past couple of years, the key entry points for conservatives in the clean energy space has been economic opportunity and some of the primary environmental benefits associated with cleaner air, cleaner water. But what we're really seeing is a shift to understanding and nuance of climate change as a particular issue, and then particularly with millennials, this being the primary hook that young voters are looking for. So it's been an impressive trend to see manifest over time, and something that we're very happy to help document here at Citizens for Responsible Energy Solutions. I'd be remiss to not talk a little bit about National Clean Energy Week. Part of what we're about at Citizens for Responsible Energy Solutions is raising awareness for clean energy writ large. And I'll encourage participants here on the webcast to also check out National Clean Energy Week to understand where there have been major technological advances, and also to hear from elected officials and appointed officials here in Washington, but really around the country too, to understand what clean energy means in a particular administration or branch of government. And really, I think that that's where the rubber meets the road in terms of this conversation that we're having here, focused on polling and where voters' interests are. Obviously, there's a connection between the voters and elected officials, and we're encouraged by these results. And I think it will help shape our advocacy over the next few months and year. So thanks for the opportunity to be a part of this, Conor.
Great, thanks. And also on the phone, we have Benji, president of ACC.
Hey, thanks so much, Conor, and I'm really excited to be on this call with Charles as well. My name is Benji Backer, president of the American Conservation Coalition, and also a rising senior at the University of Washington in Seattle. This poll that we've done and this study that we've compiled here with WPAI is really proof as to why our organizations exist, and that being we want more action from right of center leaders, whether they're elected or just innovative thinkers, on environmental challenges and climate change and clean energy. The demand from young people, regardless of political viewpoint, is off the charts for these types of reforms, and this type of data shows why an issue like clean energy and climate could shift the outcome of an election, and it also shows why a bipartisan approach on these issues is super necessary. I think a lot of people who identify as right of center think this shouldn't be a priority issue for conservatives, and I think the polling here shows the opposite of that, and shows a trend. Similar to Charles, I've been in this fight for a little over 2 years here with ACC, and there's been a huge change, and a lot of other Republican elected officials speaking out on climate and clean energy, which we think is really fantastic, and it has helped change the dialogue. I mean, these poll numbers would have been and were different 2 years ago based on other polling that was done back in 2017 and 2016. So it's really great to see the impact that CRES and ACC have been able to make on the national political landscape, as well as within the halls of Congress. It's really exciting to see that this is something that's being demanded by both sides, and it's really exciting to see that reforms are going to be pushed. But there's a lot of work to be done, and this polling shows why the work needs to be done, why this needs to be a priority going into 2020, and that young people are just ready for action on clean energy and climate from a pragmatic perspective that isn't the Green New Deal, but it's focused on technology, innovation, all the above energy, and a cleaner future that America leads the way on. So excited to chat further. Happy to be on the call, and thanks for having me on.
Great, thanks, Benji. And I said I'm Conor Maguire from WPA Intelligence. We're going to be going through the slides in the presentation. We're going to start off by hitting on these key highlights. But if you have any questions, please type them into the chat, and then we'll go through them, and hopefully at the end we'll be able to answer some of your questions live on the call as well. So I'll kind of be reminding people once in a while to, if you got any questions, if you see something comes up on a slide, something you find interesting, want to dive into later on, please feel free, just ask that question in the chat, and we'll try to get through those towards the end of the presentation. So to start off, to just let everyone know, this was an N of 801 GOP millennials. This was done, 81% of these respondents were done online. Finding millennials these days is obviously very difficult, and adjusting to polling methodology has to be made to find these. So we went to an online for majority of this collection, and then the split of the remaining 19% was between landlines and live dial to cell phones. Survey was conducted between July 7th and 9th. So just jumping right on into the key highlights. Really the key highlights here, millennial GOP voters believe the Republican Party needs to do more when it comes to addressing the issue of climate change. GOP millennial voters agree that ignoring climate change will be harmful to the Republican Party. We'll get into all the details of these in a few minutes. And then millennial GOP voters believe in human-caused climate change. Millennial GOP voters agree that we should accelerate the growth of clean energy so that our nation can be a world leader in the competition for economic development and good paying jobs. I think that's kind of an important one here, which kind of is reflected in some of the later slides as well. Support is high for government taking steps to reduce emissions of gases like carbon dioxide, methane emissions, and cause global climate change. So you can see there's a couple of infographics around here. Like I said, everyone said this is being recorded, so you can kind of dive into these later on as well. But that's right, 78% of millennial Republicans support the government taking action to accelerate development of clean energy. I think that's just a very, very big number there. We've got a lot. So jumping straight into this, climate change concerns. So to get a clean read was, do you believe in human-caused climate change? Now, a majority of GOP millennial voters do believe in human-caused climate change at 57%. 20% say no. But supporters come mainly forms Catholics, Libertarian Republicans at 66%, and both men and women age 18 to 30 are pretty high up there in the 60s as well. A couple things to notice on the right side, we break most of these questions off into demo groups, so you can see the splits between Republican tribes, conservative, moderate, very conservative, demographic breaks, age, and gender, as well as those kind of socioeconomic groups that college, less than college, making less than 75K, all the way up to higher degrees, making more than $75,000 a year. I think these are kind of interesting to take a look at. Always kind of want to break down by these kind of socioeconomic breaks. You can see that groups, they are pretty similar. The over college and over 75 is about 64% for this group, as yes, they do believe in human-caused climate change. Also, one notion to point out is Catholics do come up ranking up pretty high in this as well, across the board. Now it's 70% here. Moving on to our next slide, we were taking a look at how much we say your concerns on addressing climate change have evolved over the past few years. I think this is important. Benji brought this up. Things have changed quite a bit. We don't necessarily have a real clean read on which direction these people have gone, but from the data here, it's pretty evident that a lot of young people have changed their minds and are, evolved during the last few years based on climate change. 66% of people saying that they have, evolved a lot or just some. Some of the bigger groups here, moderates, traditional GOP, libertarian GOP. I think kind of one thing is always interesting to point out is where the age break comes in here. Male and female, both 18 to 30, they are at 72 and 73% respectively. Once you cross that line of getting over 31, it kind of drops down a little bit, especially with this question of the involved. That's probably just a byproduct of people kind of a little bit more steadfast in their positions. So we did some verbatims for these as well. So when thinking about climate change, what is your greatest concern? Now this word cloud is people who say that they have changed their opinions on climate change in the last few years. And so some of the big things you hear the word cloud obviously see is melt, change, climate. So just kind of going around some of the verbatims, we've got female 22 to 26 with a bachelor's degree, somewhat conservative. Future generations, how animals will suffer, kids will suffer. Then we've got fossil fuels, pollution, a male, somewhat conservative. And then we've got something that kind of comes up quite often, polar ice caps melting, a female between 31 and 34, high school grad, and as well as mirror that up with sea levels will rise and global temperatures will rise. Storms become worse and oceans polluted as a male 27 to 30 years old from the New England area. Now, looking at a word cloud of those people who do not say that their opinions have changed much, we have millennial GOP voters who are involved a little bit or not. The greatest concern is negative impacts on the economy. I think this is kind of one thing we'll see later on, and as well as the economy and jobs is kind of a focus for this group. Negative impact on the economy. Countries that are contributing to pollution like China and India are doing nothing at all to help the environment, as well as we've got some subtle changes to Earth's orbit, and I don't have any concerns about it. Some people it's just not on their radar. But in general, this kind of a little bit more effects on the economy and kind of what other countries are doing, which does actually play in, make sense with some of the other slides that we're going to be discussing as well. So this question, we really asked, how much of a priority should it be for the U.S. to expand and use renewable energy resources such as wind and solar? What do you say is very important, somewhat important, not important? Well, the very and somewhat important, really, really very strong in this. We're at 82% here. Really, over 3/4 of millennials, GOP millennials, think that developing renewable energy sources is extremely important. This is strong. This is where these people that are young, this is what they see, this is what they support. Not that all or not at all is very, very low, down to 10%. So it's clear, the GOP millennials really do want to see, expanded use in energy resources, wind and solar, really that all the above approach. Now let's take a look at political environment. One of the questions we always kind of thought of is make sure that this isn't a universe of people that say they're GOP millennials. These are Republicans that are millennials. They support Trump at 81%. Which is, very, strong number here, only about 7% go the other way, the nominee. Of course, on the demo groups here, you've got very conservative and 90% Trump. Trump GOP is at 97%, very, very high. So these voters really do support reelecting President Donald Trump. And so, particularly strong with very conservatives, non-educated college individuals making over 75K. So that's always something that we look at when we're looking at lots of polling, is that non-educated but making more than 75K. This is a coalition that really has kind of moved over to the Republican side and to the president, and see that holds up very strong here. And this is something that we've got to always want to keep a look at that segment of the socioeconomic levels of GOP millennials. Now taking a look at who do you think is doing a better job in proposing and discussing solutions to address climate change, the Republican Party or the Democrat Party? 63% of millennials, GOP millennials, do believe the Republican Party is doing a better job. You do have some groups, about 20%, 19%, that are leaning to the Democrat Party. These are kind of strong support for the Republican Party, but I think there's definitely some growth here, and this is where Republicans talking about this issue can really help, kind of move that 19% back into the Republican side. These are people, these are Republicans. They just need Republicans to be talking about these issues for them to actually understand and know that Republicans are both proposing and discussing these issues. So this looks like kind of a good support for the Republican Party, but then a great place for expansion and growth for Republicans wanting to discuss climate change and solutions. So now we kind of jumped into, are you more or less likely to support a candidate for public office who believes human activity is contributing to climate change, or does it make no difference in your support? 45% of GOP millennials saying yes. This will make me more likely to support a candidate who holds this belief. So this is pretty strong. The less likely is only down at 12%. No difference. It's 36%. That's kind of not too surprising. There's always going to be that third that has their issues that this necessarily doesn't come to the top of. But for 45% of GOP millennials to really be more likely to support a candidate who holds his views, I think this is very strong. Some of the bigger groups here, the demo groups, are moderates at 54%, which I think is pretty telling. Now we did a split. We kind of split a couple questions. So this question is only about N of 395, and we asked do you agree or disagree the Republican Party will lose support of voters like you if they ignore climate change or the need for clean energy solutions? Now 49%, almost 50% of Republican millennials do believe that Republican Party could lose support, which I think this is interesting and good thing to point out that other GOP millennials are concerned that the party could suffer if there is not if we have candidates that ignore this and do not want to discuss it. But 34% of them do disagree, and that's part of a lot of the group that definitely might not matter necessarily to their vote. But 49% is very consistent with our other numbers here. Our second half of that question, the split, was do you believe the Republican Party needs to do more or less when it comes to addressing the issue of climate change? This was in 400. Over 2/3 of millennials believe that government needs to do more to tackle issues regarding climate change. 67%. Among those voters, the majority is age 18 to 30. 18 to 30, 73% for men, 72% women identify, then those identify as being traditional Republicans at 73%. You can see how the demos break down as well. The highest numbers are Libertarian GOP up at 78, moderates at 76. But there is a large number, 67%, that do believe the Republican Party needs to do more when addressing issues of climate change. So there's certainly viewed room for growth in what the Republicans are doing at this point. So now, America World Leader Policy Support section. This is kind of question we talked about what America does kind of impacts and relates to the rest of the world. So our question here is, do you support or oppose the government taking action to accelerate the development and use of clean energy in the United States? Yes, this is 78% of GOP millennials believe that the government should be taking action to help accelerate use of clean energy products. Very, very little small opposed, only 12%, and 5% of that is strong opposed. So this is very positive for wanting and having that thirst for the actually government taking action and actually doing something to promote development and use of clean energy in the United States. Next question on this section is another split. We asked if you agree or disagree that we should accelerate the growth of clean energy so that our nation can be a world leader in competition for economic development and good paying jobs. So this one really was even stronger, the 80% support. And I think really kind of the crux of it here is, and you'll see in the second question, is the economic development and good paying jobs approach to it. This is kind of very, very strong support here. On the next question that we double this up was kind of a moral approach. So this side of it was, do you believe the United States has a moral obligation to take a greater international leadership role by enacting policies that will address climate change and serve as model for other countries, or should the United States defer to the leadership of other countries when it's addressing climate change? Now, I think this now 61% believe the U.S. should take a greater role, but from this, it looks clear from the previous slide that the economic development and good paying jobs is really the pusher and the important thing here. Only about 17% so the U.S. should defer to other countries. On the demographic breaks, you can see traditional GOP, Trump GOP voters self-identified are both high at 65, really pulling it up. Moderates at 70, pulling that number up quite a bit. This one here really doesn't break much across age or gender groups. All about low 60s support, right around the average for the question as a whole. Now, continuing on this, we have, do you support or oppose a government taking steps to reduce emissions of gases like carbon dioxide and methane emissions that cause global climate change? This is one of those points from the key findings page in the beginning. And yes, 72% of GOP millennials do support the government taking steps to reduce emissions. We see this across the board, somewhat conservatives at 79%, moderates at 80% on this. Traditional GOP, 78, very close to the top here is what's kind of pulling it up. And then you can see in the bottom, the demo groups kind of split across. Northeast is 78%, Midwest. In the West, I think is a little bit lower at 64 and 66% respectively. So just to remind everyone, this was, conducted, nationwide between GOP and millennial voters age 18 to 38. The survey was 801 millennial GOP voters nationwide, margin of error 3.5. I think we got a very great sample here. The online panel really allowed us to talk to a lot of actual millennial voters that we were able to get some very good insights from them. Just, going back, our key findings, majority of GOP millennials believe human-caused climate change at 57% compared to 20% who don't believe. Plurality of GOP millennial voters agree that ignoring climate change would be harmful to the Republican Party. That's 49%. However, 1/3 of these voters disagree with this view at 34%, and 16% are just undecided on it. 2/3 of the millennial voters have seen their concerns on climate change evolve over the past years at 66%. So people are moving on this. There's kind of more attention to this. There's more young people being involved in this. And I think, coming from the Republican side, you can see there is change here as well. Most change is 42%. It's mainly, comprised of moderates at 77%, college-educated individuals making over 75K at 74%, really have seen their views evolve and change. Millennial GOP voters' concerns of climate change have evolved, tend to mention the greatest concerns are fossil fuels, plastic, melting ice caps, kind of the things that we do hear quite often in the media, in the news. Now, millennial GOP voters who are concerned climate change has evolved very little or not at all. Their focus is negative effects in the economy. So there's going to be some answer to that, and I think some of the questions that we talked about, as in being a leader with new technologies to increase jobs, is certainly an answer to that concern there. Over 3/4 of GOP millennial voters think that developing renewable energy resources is important. It's 82%. Over 3/4 of GOP millennial voters are likely to support re-electing Donald Trump. It's a good reminder of the fact that these are Republicans. These are not people that have just kind of fallen into the survey. We were able to actually talk to Republican millennial voters who do support the president. Nearly 2/3 of GOP millennial voters think the GOP party is better at addressing climate change, 63%. Now, like I said, there's that that group that maybe thinks that Democrats may be doing a better job. That's a great group of people to go after first, to explain our positions, where we stand, in direction that we're looking at, and really get those millennials voters back on our side at the ballot box. Plurality of GOP millennial voters more likely to support a candidate who believes that human activity contributes to climate change. 2/3 of millennials believe the government needs to do more to tackle issues. So there's a thirst, there is a desire for the government to actually take action, kind of outside of just steps of discussing this. There's plenty of room, there's thirst to have discussions about this, but among GOP millennials, 67%, really support the government tackling some of these issues as well. Once again, 3/4 of millennials, GOP millennials, support government actions to develop clean energy, 78%. When questioned about the need for U.S. advancement in clean energy to promote better jobs in the economy, over 3/4 of GOP millennials have agreed to this. That's the promote better economy and jobs. That is strong on this. And just under 2/3 millennial voters likely to support U.S. international leadership addressing climate change. And that was the kind of split between the jobs versus the moral side of things. Now, once again, there was definitely support for United States government taking a moral lead on this, but here we see the real big support is behind us taking a lead for to create new jobs and economic growth. Nearly 3/4 of millennials support greater implication of the U.S. government to reduce greenhouse gases that impact global climate, 72%. So really, kind of in summation, we see that millennials, GOP millennials, are engaged. They are interested in hearing about what Republicans have to offer. There's a good percent think that Republicans have done and are better at the climate change conversation, but following that, there is a large percent that want to see Republicans talking about it more and doing more. So I think this is the presentation that we've put together. I think if any of the presenters are on, they can kind of jump in, ask me questions. If there are any questions for us to jump into, I'm happy to have it ask. If one of the CRES team members is on, are there any questions or?
Hey, Conor. Yeah, I think just a couple questions on kind of how we can best reach out to elected officials, Republican elected officials, and kind of educate them on this issue, and kind of what would be the top takeaways you think that elected officials would be interested in hearing about from this poll?
Great. So I think just going back to the key highlights page, I think it's important that the elected officials, and people close to elected officials get a chance to see these numbers. I think that's kind of the main thing, getting this information out that, 67% of millennials believe the Republican Party needs to do more when it comes to addressing climate change. When we're talking about, like I kind of said, one of the things we should be talking about, yes, there's a desire to discuss this and talk about this and have a plan, but there is real strong support for supporting legislation, or millennials supporting legislation to actually take action and to engage in this. So I think the two teams here, CRES and ACC, do a phenomenal job of getting this information out. And all this information is all available on the CRES Forum website, cresforum.org. The data is there. I think the top things really to talk about is the desire for us to engage in this conversation. All the above energy solution. There's a desire for renewables, and for us to take, as Republicans, to take an approach and take a look at, what is possible and what we're able to do. I think from just these numbers here, there is support from GOP millennials for that.
Great, thanks so much. I think that was all the questions that we had. I have one more. How can we talk about some of these climate change statistics and make sure that the administration stays kind of from a local to federal issue becomes more apparent throughout the party? from local to federal to the administration.
Great. So, I think it's important to take a look at the different breaks by, who these people are that are, giving back their opinions on this survey. I think it really, since this report for these programs really goes across, kind of all socioeconomic backgrounds, education, gender, and age. I think there's ability to talk about this on every level. If we're talking about it on a local level, first steps of kind of what you can do in your home area, in your districts, but then also how that pairs up to our federal level. I think you see there's desire to talk about it and discuss it on a local level, but then once we get to kind of a federal level, to see how this matches up with the president's administration and the plans there, I think it's just really important to show that there is support for the government actually taking action and actually leading the way. And with this very pro business and pro jobs administration, I think really a good tie-in here is that like we saw in the data, is that these Republican millennials really care about jobs and how this and the government investing in clean energy and renewable energy, that is a way to create high, potentially high paying, very cutting edge jobs for millennials themselves.
Right. Okay. All right. I think we are out of our time here. Thank you all for your questions and participation. We'll be sending out a recording. If you have additional questions for anyone on the team, please feel free to reach out. My email is lfair@citizens4.com, and we're happy to answer additional questions. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.